In this video, I'm going to talk to you about hours of service and electronic logging devices, and I'm going to teach you the secrets of solving your HOS problem. I see so many motor carriers trying to solve hours of service from training videos and that type of stuff in getting their drivers to do the right behavior to solve the hours of service problem. And I'm here to tell you that does not work. The majority of hours of service problems are due to your driver not knowing how to use the electronic logging device. That's it. That is the number one problem. So in our company, we handle the hours of service on behalf of clients, and we have a 24-hour call center in which we get calls from drivers. 99% of the calls are due to the electronic logging device, and it's because the driver does not know how to use it. So if you really want to drive down your hours of service problem with your trucking operation, you have got to solve the electronic logging device issue. Think about your smartphone, whether you're an Apple user or an Android user or whatever. There is so much on that device that you could learn to use it effectively. Using voice commands on it, using the accessibility part of it, using the different apps on that device. That is the same issue going on with the electronic logging device. A driver will learn a handful of things to do with the electronic logging device, but they don't know how to use it effectively. And I see this time and time and time and time again. They just don't understand it. So how do you solve your hours of service problem? You really need to focus on training your drivers during the onboarding process of the electronic logging device. Here's what we do. Is you put the driver in the seat, put their seatbelt on, and you have your trainer, your safety person, the manager, somebody play a DOT officer, highway patrol officer. Driver shuts the door, they're in the driver's seat with their seatbelt on. You open the door and you conduct a mock roadside inspection about the electronic logging device. So the first thing that can result in a violation is the driver using the electronic logging device. So making sure the driver can log in and log out of the device. They show you right there in the driver's seat. Show me how to log in and log out of the device. The next thing that can result in a violation is the driver does not know how to unmount the ELD from the RAM mount or whatever mount you're using in your vehicle. So asking the driver, please unmount the ELD and hand it to me. Okay, so you avoid that violation. The next one is show me on the electronic logging device how to transfer the logs. This is a big one. I see this every single day in our operation is a driver does not know how to transfer the logs. So actually unmount the ELD, get the tablet, navigate to whatever the section of your ELD is to transfer the logs, teaching the drivers on that roadside inspection what the officer is going to give them. So there's only two things. It's a web code or an email address. Those are the only two things the officer is going to give the driver to put in that device to transfer the logs. What is the next piece of information that they need to know is what days does the officer want to see? So you just can't teach them to go to the DOT inspection button on your ELD. You got to tell them, okay, I want you to know that the officer is going to either give you a code or an email that you got to put in. And where do you put that into the electronic logging device? And then they're going to tell you what days they want. Generally, they want the last 8 days of logs. And so how do you navigate the calendar function of that transfer to do that so that the driver is not fumbling around on trying to figure that out? So when you're teaching your drivers to do that, get them to do it in the driver's seat. That's how they're going to remember it. Doing it in the classroom is not the same. It's not going to get the same effect of doing this the way that I'm talking about. All right. Then there's certain paperwork that has to be in the truck for the electronic logging device. And I see this done different ways in operations. It can be in the tractor binder, it can be a separate binder, things like that. But you've got to organize it for the driver and do it during this mock roadside inspection so they understand where it is. So you need an ELD user manual. A lot of times in the user manual is the DOT transfer instructions, and it could be on page 40 of that manual, and you do not want your driver stuck trying to figure out where that is if they forget how to do this. You need to take out the DOT transfer instructions and make it a separate document in the tractor for them. So you got the ELD user manual, you've got the DOT transfer instructions, you've got to have something in the tractor binder about what to do in an ELD malfunction. Generally, what I tell motor carriers is to put those instructions on the front cover of the binder. The instructions could be simple. Please call this toll-free number to the safety department if you have an ELD malfunction. That's the instruction. That's just it. Making sure you have a logbook in that binder with 8 days of blank logs. So you can get a violation for not having the manual, not having the DOT instructions, not having the ELD malfunction instructions, and not having the blank logbook. Got to have those 4 things. Here's what happens generally with the logbook. Officer pulls over the driver and says, I need to see the blank logbook for your truck. And they start looking. They're looking in the overhead bins. They're looking in the glove box. They're looking over here. They're looking over there. And they can't find it. Make it easy for your drivers to find this. The good motor carriers will have the tractor binder, a 3-ring notebook with the clear plastic sleeves. They got the cab card in there. They've got the annual inspection. They've got their insurance card. They got their IFTA. They got the permits. And then they have the ELD manual, the DOT instructions, the ELD malfunction instructions, and then the blank logbook slides into that sleeve there. So everything is real easy for the driver to find. But during your mock DOT stop with your driver during the onboarding process, you're going to say, show me the annual inspection in your tractor binder. Show me the cab card. Show me the insurance card. Show me your permits. Show me the ELD manual. You see what's going on here is you're teaching them in the seat of the truck how to do this properly. And they have that memory of, okay, I get stopped and this is what I'm doing. The other thing I tell motor carriers is put up one of those binder clips on the front of the notebook and they can slide their CDL and med card under that binder, hand the binder to the officer, put a table of contents in the front of that binder that, goes through the pages. You want to be as organized as possible. Think about roadside stops. It could be 100 degrees out. It could be raining. It could be snowing. It could be the dead of night. Having an organized notebook will be a lot more successful at the end of the day to survive that roadside inspection. Then when you're going through all of that on your mock DOT inspection, then you can go to the next part of getting them out of the truck, show me the emergency equipment, show me how to do a pre-trip inspection, and you can continue from there. But in this video, we're talking about hours of service and all that. I have found operations that do that mock DOT stop have a real quick success on solving their hours of service issues from that. The next training that you have to do on the ELD, our number one problem that we fix on the phone for all of our operations is the driver forgot to log out at the end of their day and they left themselves on the on-duty line. Think about all the things that go on in your day as safety and all the compliance you've got to do. That takes a lot of time. So teach your drivers. I even tell companies to put labels on the ELD that says, don't forget to log out, that kind of stuff, because it can be 5, 10, 15 minutes every time that happens. And if you're not watching that in the ELD dashboard, then what'll happen is the driver will be out of hours. They get in a hurry, they start going, they're going to get pulled over. They're going to get an hours of service violation because they just simply forgot to log out and you forgot to take them from the on duty line off to off duty to give them their break and all that. So teach them about going to off duty first. And you got to put these steps in so they understand is you just can't get to the end of your day, you stop and you just log out. Make sure that they go to off duty. If they need to certify their logs, some ELDs make you certify the log at the end of the trip. Others make you certify it when they come back on duty the next time and they certify at that point. So it's just depending on what your ELD does, but teaching them to go to off duty and then log out of their tablet. I see a lot of problems with team drivers where one driver drives on the other driver's hours because they don't do that step right there. The other area that I spend a lot of time on and my staff spends a lot of time on is coaching and teaching drivers about the 30-minute break rule. I get a lot of drivers that they feel that they have to drive the full 8 hours to take their 30-minute break. That is not the case. So in reality, what is going on is the driver is driving and their ELD starts flashing at them about taking their 30-minute break. They pull over into the emergency lane, try to get stopped. They'll miss it by 30 seconds to a minute, and it's causing those 30-minute break violations. Number one, parking in the emergency lane is very dangerous. I have handled so many fatality accidents of a driver that's pulled over in the emergency lane. An inattentive driver runs into the rear of the parked tractor and trailer and causes a fatality accident. And you do not want to have your drivers involved in that. So if you put in the dash cameras, like I highly recommend, and you see parked on highway, ramp, or the emergency lane, you need to coach your drivers not to do that. That is an unsafe behavior, and they do not need to do this. On the 30-minute break, you've got to train your drivers to take their 30-minute break somewhere between the 4 and 6 hour mark of their shift. They need to take a full 30 minutes. I always tell drivers take 35 minutes. So if your ELD is in a bad connectivity area, then, that's can be counted as a full break and you're not going to get dinged for 29 minutes and 58 seconds and have that. Also tell your drivers on 30-minute breaks, that is one thing in the ELD that cannot be fixed because they're coming off the drive line. There is no way to fix a 30-minute break. And yes, before someone is thinking, well, if I have a driver on duty and they didn't take, you can grab some more on duty. That's not realistically what's going on is they're coming off the drive line and you cannot fix the 30-minute break. So you got to train your drivers to do it the full 30 minutes at the 4 to 6 hour mark. Don't wait until the 8 hour mark because that is a bad practice and that is a real problem. Then there's personal conveyance. And personal conveyance leads to falsification of logs. That is a 30-point CSA violation for a falsified log, and it's going to get you in trouble. You've got to train your drivers about PC, and this is not to be used at any point in the direction of the motor carrier. You just cannot use PC to further the load towards a destination or things like that. You, as the safety professional, have to watch that. And I look at it, and if I see PC in the ELD dashboard, I'm looking at the breadcrumbs. Did the driver arrive in Kansas City and then they went to Walmart or to the laundry or something like that? That makes sense. PC is supposed to be used for a personal move. And then I'm running reports of anything over 2 hours. Okay, what's going on here? Is the driver on Interstate 40 and still going down the highway? They ran out of their 11 hours, then they go to PC, but they're still going in the same direction. That's going to get you a falsification of a log. And that's going to be a real problem for your driver and your hours of service. So you've got to eliminate all that. The next thing that really causes a lot of hours of service issues, it's an easy fix, but our drivers do a horrible job on this, is annotating the log. You've got to be able to tell the story. Your driver has to be able to tell the story of what's going on. So even if your driver gets into a situation where someone else moves their truck in the middle of the day and your ELD does not allow the driver to remove the drive time, the most classic example is the driver's on their 10-hour break. A mechanic moves the truck 2 miles during the middle of their shift, breaks up their 10. They have no hours. Your ELD does not allow the 2-mile move by the mechanic to be removed because it's on the drive line. The secret is you have to annotate that move, that it was a mechanic move. Your driver most likely will survive a roadside inspection if the log is annotated correctly. So I see this all the time where some drivers just hit the keyboard and so it's a bunch of letters as the annotation. No, that doesn't work. Putting in the letters PC for personal conveyance. No, that's not going to work. AC for adverse conditions. That's not going to work. Lunch, probably not going to work. It's putting in real annotations. That's where I really want you to spend your time. Training your drivers to improve their ELD handling is on annotations. That is how your drivers are going to survive roadside inspections. It's better annotation in the ELD and really working with that. The good thing is a lot of electronic logging devices have the ability to put in template responses. That's a drop-down box that the driver can only choose these 4 responses, and that can really help improve that. So when your DOT officer is pulling you over and you see a log that doesn't have annotations, it's a mess, it's got the mechanic move that wasn't annotated, they're just going to write your driver the tickets, and which is going to make your hours of service just explode and really be problematic with your insurance company. So annotation is the secret on solving those problems there. Teaching your drivers about adverse conditions. It's okay to use adverse conditions if it is unforeseeable. And that's the secret, is you can't go into Atlanta traffic at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and use adverse conditions and put in traffic. That's not going to work. Driving in a snowstorm and saying that it was bad weather is not going to work if the driver knew at the beginning of the day that they were going to be driving through a snowstorm. Those type of things. It's annotating it properly so that it survives a DOT roadside inspection. Paper logs is another real problem that causes hours of service issues. So the aha moment that we have had recently over the last couple of years is paper log usage is not taught in CDL schools. So if you get a driver out of CDL school, you're assuming they know how to use the electronic logging device because they were taught in CDL school. They are not taught about the ELD in CDL school. They're not. Then you think they know how to use paper logs, and they're not taught that either. So going back to the beginning of this video where I said you have to have 8 days of blank logs in the truck, that's true. Then you've got to teach your drivers the only time you can use a paper log is for an ELD malfunction. That's key. You just can't run out of hours and then go to paper. Don't do that. And then the big one on the paper log is when a malfunction happens, they have to annotate the paper log that an ELD malfunction occurred. So let me give you an example. The ELD has been working perfectly. I'm on Interstate 10. I left Orlando, Florida, went up 75, got on Interstate 10. I made it to Mobile, Alabama. My ELD malfunctions, and I have to go to paper logs in Mobile, Alabama. So they get out the paper log, they draw their line down, their first line down, and it says ELD malfunction. So they're going to do two things. They're going to write the ELD malfunction, and then they're going to follow the ELD instructions of calling safety or maintenance or whoever they need to call that they have an ELD malfunction. But they have to annotate the log with the malfunction. And then they just handle the paper log properly. So you're going to have to teach your drivers how to fill out paper logs. I get in this conversation a lot with drivers. If I have to run paper, I'm not running. It's not that hard. It's the same for duty statuses on the ELD. You just got to teach your drivers how to use a paper log. The other big miss from motor carriers, not sending the logs for the last 8 days to your drivers. So remember, their ELD does not work, right? They just told you, I have an ELD malfunction. It's not working. I moved to paper logs. I've annotated my paper log with the ELD malfunction. You have got to download the last 8 days logs in a PDF and email those to your drivers so that they are on their person should they get stopped. I look at a lot of violations for a whole bunch of different motor carriers, and that is the number one problem with paper logs is they get it and they just don't have the previous logs. Now, you can make it really hard on your driver. You can say, you need to recreate the last 8 days on your paper logs, and, they can spend hours of doing that. I fill out paper logs, and it takes a while to do it all. But making sure that you send them the PDF and go to the ELD, download the last 8 days logs, email it to your driver, and they're good to go on that. So going back through everything, if you really want to drive down your hours of service basic score, let's say you're in the high 80s and 90s and things like that, you're on the radar with the FMCSA, and they're going to come do a focused compliance review and talk to you about what are you doing about your hour service. Your insurance company is looking at it also going, what the heck is going on with the hour service, and why are you not fixing the problems? So as a overview of everything, you're going to do the mock DOT inspection as you're onboarding with your drivers. Even if you have drivers, you watch this video and you have drivers that have been on board with you for 5 years, you're going to do this and go through that exercise of unmounting the ELD, showing me how to transfer the logs, show me how to log in and log out, show me where the documents are in the tractor. You're going to go through everything during that mock inspection. And then you're going to train your driver on the electronic logging device. This is how you log in, log out. This is how you take adverse conditions. This is how you take personal conveyance. This is how you put your shipments in. This is how you put your trailers in. That's another big area that motor carriers miss is form and manner is the driver just drives. They don't put the bill of lading or shipment number in, and they don't put the trailers in. You've got to put those training sessions in and have the driver show that they know how to do this. Making sure your drivers certify their logs every single day. You see where I'm going with all this? It's not that they have to know all the hours of service rules and all that. They have to know how to use the electronic logging device. The other big tip on that I'll tell you is take the ELD manual. The manual could be 90 pages long. Get down a PDF, just rip that original manual. You have to have the original manual in the truck, but rip down the original manual to the things that you need your drivers to understand as a quick reference guide. So what is on the quick reference guide? Logging in, logging out. Number 2, putting in the trailer numbers. Number 3, putting in shipments. Number 4, getting to the grid. Number 5, knowing how to get to the options or exceptions for adverse conditions and P&C. Making sure that they know how to accept log edits. That's a real big one right there, is making sure that they get those log edits accepted, because you can just go into a never-ending circle where you send a log edit to your driver, they reject it, and the log is never fixed on that. So making sure that you have something that is a quick reference guide for your drivers and getting them to learn those core things. And I didn't name a bunch of them. I only named about 8 different things that they have to be really good at. And if they will do that consistently, your hours of service will drop in a hurry on that. So do the mock audit, do the training of the ELD, and then you've got to monitor the ELD dashboard and coach, retrain your drivers on different issues. If they're having problems with the 30-minute break, solve the 30-minute break problem, that 4 to 6 hour mark. If they are always hitting their 11 and 14 hours, the secret to that is force your drivers to call dispatch when they're running out of hours. Again, with safety, you've got to understand the why. Driver, why did you get into that situation that you're running out of hours today? And that way you can do coaching right on the phone on what has happened. There's a whole lot of different things that I can cover in other videos about split sleeper berth and detention at shippers and receivers because the trailer's not ready and all that. Those are more complex things to solve the hours of service problem. But if you will really focus on doing the mock DOT inspection, train your driver how to use the ELD, your hours of service problems will be solved. It will just eliminate the majority of the things that happen under your hours of service basic. And go look at your hours of service basic. Look at the top 5 problems that you're having. And I bet that the top 5 problems for your operation are form and manner. They're not putting the trailers, they're not putting their shipments in, and they're not certifying their logs. Then the next one would be falsification of log because they're not annotating the log properly. The DOT officer cannot understand the story from looking at the log. And then the last thing is the driver is just not using the ELD properly to manage their time. If you look at those top 3 to 5 things that are going on with your hour service basic score, everything I talked about in this video will solve those problems if you will just do those consistently with every one of your drivers and keep working with them to understand how to use their electronic logging device. Anyway, I hope all these tips help. You guys be safe out there. Until next time.